So I would like to give a very warm welcome, especially to all those out there listening in to our session today, our session on in the WISE, Reshaping Media Representations of Impact, Spotlight on Her. And I'm looking forward to being able to, accompany this group of powerful women during this next hour. We will first look at the roles that each of you has. I will introduce you a little bit. Then I'll talk a little bit about myself. I will also talk about WISE and the different ways of scaling. And then we just jump into our discussion. And thanks a lot for being with us, and a warm welcome to our panel here. I would like to introduce first Rana. She is the CEO of Womenity Foundation. A warm welcome, Rana, to our conversation today. Rana is a development executive, a social justice advocate, and a writer with over 15 years of experience in the public, private, and non-governmental sector. So you know all sectors. You also founded your own Changing Pink. I really love that name, through which you partnered with the public, private, and non-governmental sector, and where you try to eliminate gender inequalities between men and women, especially in the MENA region. And you joined Womenity in 2018, and you're currently the CEO, and you're driving the foundation's mission of accelerating gender equality through innovative investments. Warm welcome, Rana. Thank you for being with us. We also have here Katja Murman from Switzerland. You're head of digital and product of the Blick Group. You're also an editor-in-chief, and you're a member of the executive board and from the Blick Group and from Ringier Zurich. I think you call it Ringier or Rangier. Is it Ringier? Ringier. Okay, thank you. So you drive the digital development of the Blick Group as the head of digital. You're also building bridges between newsroom, technology, and data. And as a co-founder of the initiative Edit-a-thon, which aims to bring women's biographies to Wikipedia, and Equal Voice, which aims to increase the visibility of women in media coverage and give them an equal voice, you are committed to increasing the equality of women in the media. And we will hear more about that, and also some data when you will talk about this equal voice data. Thank you, sorry. A warm welcome also to Julie Pybus. You're the global editor at Pioneers Post, the independent news network for the global impact community. Your role focuses on producing inspiring stories of social enterprise around the world for a global audience, as well as supporting the colleagues to create news and analysis content. And you have already interviewed hundreds of people in all areas of life. You're also a freelance writer and editor, and you focus upon charities and social entrepreneurs, social enterprises. A warm welcome to you, Julie.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
And we know that you don't have a very strong voice yet, but you have your tea in your hand, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. Yes,
Thank you.
Wonderful. A warm welcome also to Amelia Habsari, my colleague, who is a framework change leader in the Ashoka Southeast Asian area, and you're the former program director in DOCS. So you're part of the global leadership team, and you're working in the movements, the Everyone Changemaker movement in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. In your previous role in INDOCS, here you contributed to the building of an ecosystem that helps documentary films, especially, to create social impact in Southeast Asia. A warm welcome to you, Amelia. Thank you for being with us here. So let us look again at what do we want to achieve today with this hour that we spend together and discuss the reshaping media representations of impact. We know that women are vastly underrepresented in the media. And on the other hand, media is one of the greatest shapers of mindsets and a needed ally to showcase how women lead, how they succeed, and how they have an impact. And in this session, we would love to discuss how media representations of impact are delving into how the media sector can change its framing of success and women social entrepreneurs representation. And if we look at WISE, what role does WISE have here? And I would like to say a very warm and great big thank you to Iman Bibars, the leader of the WISE movement, together with Claire Davenport and everybody else who was involved in setting up a meeting like today's, but also the series of WISE movement to strengthen social entrepreneurs. So WISE is the Ashoka's Women's Initiative for Social Entrepreneurs, which aims to elevate the number, knowledge, and the power of women social entrepreneurs and shift this paradigm of success in the ecosystem. And if we look at women, we often see that scaling out is something that is very well established, which means impacting greater numbers of people through replication and geographical dissemination. But if we look at scaling deep and scaling up, that's something that women do a lot, which means transforming mindsets, which means relationships, value systems that aren't transformed. Or in terms of scaling up, it means impacting laws and policies. And this is something that the media does not always take up, and so we're looking forward to hearing in this call, why is that? Or do you have any ideas how we can change that? So these are the topics we're going to discuss, but I was wondering about superpowers of the women here in this call. My name is Karin Hazelbach. I'm Austrian. I am a journalist. I've worked in the business field. I've worked in all different sectors, just like many of you. I've set up a female leadership program in Austria to support women who want to reach the boards, go there and be part of the boards. I've also worked as a social entrepreneur, and one of the things I played a crucial role in was to make it happen that everybody wears a helmet on the skiing slopes. I was part of this movement to create this, something that changed if you compare it to the 90s. So all these roles are part of me, and today I'm your facilitator. And now back to the superpowers. One of my superpowers is I can write with my left hand, my right hand, and my toes. Because I'm left-handed, I was forced to write with my right hand. And once I tried it out and it worked, So I'd love to hear from you. Amelia, is there anything you'd like to share? A superpower?
Yeah, interestingly, my daughter asked me this because she wanted to know, that I told her that everybody has a superpower and it's our job throughout our life to grow our superpower. And so she asked me, but then what's your superpower? So I told her that my superpower is to help others finding their superpower. So that's my role throughout my entire career, helping filmmakers finding their states, their funders, distributors, and also their voice.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amelia. Everyone at Changemaker Movement is represented through you and your superpower. Rana, what about you? What's your superpower that you would like to share with us?
Okay, great. I had a funny one. So in a sense, I was also having conversations with my daughter, and she was, in a sense, reluctant to share some, news from her side. She's 9 going on 10. So I, in a way to encourage her, I was like, oh, but you know what? You can't keep anything from mommy. Mommy can read minds. And she said, okay, let's test that. Would you be able to tell me what I'm thinking about right now? And I had 2 back-to-back correct guesses. It was an absolute luck, but it proved my superpower of reading minds with her. So now she actually does think twice when she's reluctant to share. And I'm like, do you want to tell?
Oh, I think we lost Rana for a moment. So we heard her superpower about being a mind reader. Julie, what about your superpower?
Oh, I think I'll pick my ability to write at 100 words a minute in shorthand, which is a dying art in journalism, and not many people these days get trained in shorthand. So when people see me writing away, they say, are you writing in Arabic or something? I say, no, I'm just writing down everything you're telling me. So that's my superpower.
A wonderful superpower, and comes in very handy as a journalist, being able to do that. Thank you, Julie. Katja, would you like to share your superpower?
Of course. So my superpower, really, you already mentioned it before, is kind of building bridges, bringing people together, perspectives together, and bringing together or bringing out the best of different worlds and for the better. So this is really my big passion, and I think it's really a great thing. And so this is my superpower.
Thank you, Katja. And your superpower, I think, reflects the superpower of all women here in this panel, because that's what you really do in all the different areas of life that you work in. And I'm sure many of you out there listening to us can also reflect upon that and say, one of your superpowers might be this bridge building. Thanks a lot for this introduction. We have now lost Rana, but I'm sure she will come back. You know, when we prepared for this meeting, dear audience, we said, oh, you know, things happen. Oh, Rana is back. Wonderful. Things happen. It's so normal that, you know, kids come in and whatever, noise is in the background. We get out of this call. That's so normal. And we live with this reality. But still, it's wonderful sitting in all different countries and being able to converse here together. So thanks again for being with us. I would like to start off with a question to Katja. Katja, if you look at women, and they are underrepresented here, I think, in terms of media, in terms of being, you know, mentioned, especially social entrepreneur women. So if we look at scaling out, you know, that's something that we all think that is something, these hero stories that people love to read about and journalists love to write, because it's quite easy to communicate, right? But if we look at scaling deep and scaling up, which means really changing mindsets and being able to achieve something in the area of policies and laws, that's something that the WISE movement, together with Iman, they found out that that is something that especially women are very strong at. So how can we create this change within the media sector to really look at female stories, social entrepreneurs, female social entrepreneur stories, and look at scaling deep and scaling up? Thanks for your ideas in this field. And you also bring some slides, you told us. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Karen, for the question. I think it's really very important that we see the role that media has there. And you say it correctly, women are really vastly underrepresented within media. So, and I am often asked, why is it like this? And I will show you the numbers later on when I bring up the slides. But one reason that I often hear is, well, look, women just don't have that interesting things to say. That's one thing I hear. The other reason that is often mentioned is that, well, look, at women are underrepresented in politics, they are underrepresented in economy, so media is mirroring like the reality, and thus women are not that represented in media. But for me and for my colleagues at Ringgit, those reasons, they are not really valuable, you know, because there are, as you correctly say, I mean, there are more than enough great women to write about. There are amazing stories to be told. So there are really no excuses that we don't put those women in the spotlight. So perhaps an inside perspective why it might be like this, that journalists or media in general have their difficulties in bringing women to the spotlight. As far as I see it, media was and is in some cases still made by men. And we know from, you know, from studies and from other things that you always write about or bring in the spotlight your perspective. And of course, men tend to write more about other men. But the astonishing thing is that when you bring in female writers, female journalists, you automatically have other perspectives, other heroes, other people. So this is really one very important thing, that we get in more female voices, more journalists, female journalists. And the other thing is really that it takes time to find women to write about, because, and this is a thing that we as women also can influence, because women sometimes they have great stories to tell, but we are more reluctant to tell them. Whenever a journalist calls a man and says, hey, we need an expert on this or that topic, and I mean, men you have to make one phone call, perhaps a second, but you will have a man who's saying, oh, wow, cool, I can be in media, I will tell you something. The experience that we have with women, and this is, I think, totally normal, is that women are more reluctant. They say, hey, what can I tell? Because we want to do it right, you know? So what can we tell? Is it really so interesting what I have to tell that I need to tell the world through media? So they are more reluctant, and it takes more time to convince them. And then, of course, journalists today, they are really under time pressure, you know, in newsrooms. And of course, they tend to talk to those people that they know they get a fast answer. And then you get into those circle of calling and mentioning and writing all over again the same people, you know. And this is, I think, really why women are underrepresented in media, and not only in media, but also in Wikipedia. And I can show you there the numbers, because this is also very important for me. Now, just let me see if you can, how I can do this. Oops. Oh, do you now see it like this? Does it work?
Yes,
Okay,
we can
perfect.
see your screen.
So there, I just have some numbers for you. So if you look, women make out of the Swiss population 50.4%. But in media, Swiss media, only 28 of all articles are about women. When you look in the Swiss Army, it's only 0.9% that women are there. If you look at the investment in startups owned by women, it's only 2.1%. And then, that was what I mentioned before, the percentage of women in management boards of the biggest companies in Switzerland, it's only 13%. And biographies of women on Wikipedia, it's only 18%. So, and on Wikipedia, this is also because contributors to Wikipedia are mostly men, and they write about other men and think they are more important than women. So we really need to bring in the female perspectives, and that's crucial for me. And this is why we founded Equal Voice. And Equal Voice is an initiative by Ringier, which aims to make women more visible in media, and which also aims with the aid of technology and AI to close the gap, and that the bias that is there now in the media does not transform one-to-one into the digital age. Because, I mean, Wikipedia is a good example. Wikipedia is really important for Google. So whenever you are on Wikipedia, you are there and you're seen. But if women are so underrepresented there, then if a journalist search for a woman in Google, she perhaps, if she isn't in Wikipedia, she will be rated lower. And this will have an impact of the journalist thinks, oh, this woman isn't that important, but it's just not true. She's only not on Wikipedia. So,
Katja, could you please make the screen bigger?
yes, like this?
So that we see
Is it
the
better
slide.
like this?
Yes, it's better like this.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I will just scroll a little bit like this. Yes, so and Equal Voice, what we do is we measure how visible women are in our media. And we have an AI tool there that displays really within all media of Ringier within Switzerland, which reached about 6 million people of the 9 million in Switzerland. And so we really have a good coverage there. And you see, we call it the Equal Voice score. And we measure how visible women are on our teasers, on photos, and in our titles on the one hand. And we there see that now this is overall our teams and all our sections. Overall, we have like 32% representation of women. And of course, we have to increase that. But you see how it differs from team to team. So in sports, women are really vastly underrepresented. In people section, which is like entertainment, it's nearly 50-50, but you see that in business and it's not so good, to be honest. It's like under 30%. But what you see here, the two columns, is the increase within 1 year. So we managed to increase the visibility of women within all our teams in the last year, and this is due to Equal Voice, because we measure it and we take measures to increase the visibility. And I think this is really a very important step, because, I mean, before everybody was telling me, hey, I mean, we're in 2021 or 2020, we don't need to do anything, it's all done. But then when you measure it and you see the pure facts, nobody can argue against it, because we really see we have a problem here and we need to do something against it. And that's really what Equal Voice aims at. And perhaps I can later on, I can tell you a little bit more what we do. So.
Thank you, Katja. Yeah, that's wonderful to hear, especially if we want to achieve impact, as you point out, we need to measure the impact we have in order to be able to change it. So thanks for this brief input in the beginning, talking about what you perceive as why women are not so represented, and also giving us hope with your impact study to see how you, within your environment, your media company, change that. I would like to turn now to Rana and ask you, you've had so much experience in all different fields, in all different sectors, you know, you're also a writer. So if you look at women and especially social entrepreneurs and how they scale up and deep and out, why do you think, as Katja also mentioned, that we tend to have the hero stories, we tend not to look so much at scaling up and deep? And why is this chosen, you know, the specific type? And is there a specific audience that maybe requires that? You know we need a good story as a journalist, but what is it that you see as main barriers and how to overcome them?
Thank you for the question. I think it's a really interesting question. Your data was super interesting. I was about to share also similar data, but maybe kind of looking at, like, you know, global numbers, and again, might not be as recent as, you know, equal voices with, you know, a specific focus. I think, to be honest, obviously, Katja mentioned, you know, one of the biggest main reasons is that mass media, if we look at mass media in general, is still very much a culprit in this. And mass media is a culprit due to the same factors that Katja mentioned. I mean, the numbers that I have here as well, and these are, you know, global numbers. So the global report on the status of women in news media says that 73% of top management jobs in media is still occupied by men. 2/3 of reporting jobs that are held by men. And the point here is not just a numbers game from a pure numbers game, but it's also a matter of bringing voices and representation of stories and just a different perspective. From a MENA perspective, just to build, or Middle East and North Africa, which is the region that, you know, as Womanity, we operate in primarily through a media, platform. So an initiative where we built a digital media platform for voices of women from the region, for the purposes of, you know, shattering, gender stereotypes and going beyond the limitations of what mass media does. We also know that in Middle East and North Africa, men in the journalism profession outnumber women by a 5-to-1 ratio. Women representation at senior roles is at a mere 12%, if I recall the data correctly. So when you're talking 5-to-1, when you're talking top management, senior roles in media at 12%, but we know still that actually from the very few studies on media that we have in the region, that almost 80%, and although I have to qualify this is quite an old survey. That's another challenge we face in Middle East and North Africa, which is the lack of data. A global challenge, but so much felt in regions, such as here. But when we know that almost 80% of the images of Arab women portrayal in mass media, so this includes everything you touch, soap operas, content, articles, anything, is still framed within a negative perspective. And what I mean by a negative perspective, I mean that they are portrayed in images where they're either sexualized, presented as immoral, illiterate, inexperienced, materialistic, weak, dependent. So there is a whole lot that we are contending with when we're really looking at a mass media perspective, where actually we have seen quite an amazing change. Because like I said, these are old numbers. I'm not expecting that we have went from 80% to 50%. I think that we're still close to 70, 75% if we've made that move, hopefully within the last few years. But I think where this region has seen quite an amazing ray of hope is in digital media. And you're all familiar with how social media played a huge role in the social change when the Arab Spring came around. And specifically in allowing spaces for young people, men and women, to be able to take up platforms and spaces, not only to represent their voices and share their stories, but to also organize and really, work around a meaningful change. Now, this space specifically, social media specifically, has been an amazing space for women and for women's rights in the region in general, and women's stories and women's perspective. And we naturally know that when women are given the space, you will start to see stories across the board, scaling deep, scaling out, scaling everywhere. And you will start to see that actually the stories that the women specifically bring to the forefront are stories about norm change. And because as soon as you open up the space to have a different perspective, you're already doing norm change. You're already introducing a difference in how things are done and how things are viewed and how things are absorbed and so on and so forth. I'll share my slides really here quickly as well, just to share some data from the region as to how this really makes an impact. And do let me know. And yeah, I think you can see my screen. So if I look at this slide here specifically, and here we are talking about the landscape in the region when it comes to what millennials, specifically young people, are craving in terms of content. And the one that I want to point out to here is we know from data that there is a preference in the region for content that reflects reality. These are the numbers for the different surveyed countries in the region: Egypt at 70%, Lebanon at 70%. So we are already hearing from people in the region saying that they actually want to have content that reflects their reality. And as soon as I hear content that reflects reality, I'm hearing an opportunity for norms and value change. If I kind of come over here, you will actually see, the huge numbers of how much what people in the region agreed that social media can play such a huge role in making it easier for Arab women to express themselves, right? 81% agreed, 85%, men versus women agreed that actually social media, and when we talk about social media, we're talking about production of all kinds of content on social media, whether it be visual, whether it be editorial and shared back on social media. So there is a huge opportunity and a huge recognition that actually this kind of content is, first of all, wanted, and it has such a powerful effect at changing some deeply seated, norms. And that's what we have obviously tried to do from our side with the creation of Khatira. And Khatira is our, platform that really is pushing all kinds of content, be it editorial, visual, which is allowing us the space to present a platform for Arab women activists, journalists, and men that are talking around topics, and not only on gender. That we cover everything. So we talk about sports and politics and the representation of our society, really, and being able to bring that back. But we're not just allowing for a platform. I think the funny thing here is in the MENA region, there is an abundance of stories. There's never a dull day, like I always say, in the Middle East, which creates for, sometimes in a very kind of catastrophic way, but there is not we don't have small amounts of stories to share. We have lots to share. The problem was us having the opportunity to give equal representation, specifically when it comes to men and women, to be able to provide a platform where people's voices can be heard, their stories can be shared, and it can be pushed out. And so that is kind of a quick, I'd love to obviously cover other points, but I think we'll get to them in the other questions as well, as to how to make actually this possible. What are some of the experiences that we have found to be extremely useful and extremely helpful in using media in a smart way to actually showcase some of these stories, but we can cover that later as well.
Thank you so much, Rana, for also showing us that you agree with Katja that there is a lot of underrepresentation of women in the important roles. And due to that, of course, it has a big influence on how then stories are shown or developed. But then again, you also draw our attention to the fact there is a lot of resources. There are so many stories, so many pearls. And the question is, how can we create resource-oriented platforms and whatever to let them show? I think we have lost Julie now, as far as I can see. So hopefully she will come back. Amelia, may I turn to you now? You have been working in the media and the documentary world for many years. And so what type of scaling do you see if you follow up on what Katja and Rana were saying, especially in this field? Could you tell us more about what is needed, in your opinion, to advance these stories of impact created by and about women in the documentaries that you have worked on for so many years?
So yeah, I don't.
Amelia, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I don't have to repeat that the
Yes,
the industry, also the film industry was.
Oh, I'm sorry, Amelia, we've lost you again. Could you unmute yourself?
So in 2015, some women filmmakers in the US who are women of color, they started a group called Brown Girls Doc Mafia. And what is this Brown Girls Doc Mafia thing? These are basically a collective. They existed as a Facebook group. So members can get members. It's by invitation only for all women of color working in the documentary industry. You can be filmmakers, but you can be also funders, festival organizers, or distributors. And what did actually this group do? It seems, the group seems to be, casual. We can share knowledge. We build network. If anybody needs a crew, then they, they can say, hey, I'm shooting this in, Atlanta or wherever in Southeast Asia. I need women of color to be in my production. But the impact of this network is actually quite large. Why? Because I think the founding members of this group know that women of color needs to be represented, as directors, as producers, as crew members in productions that are concerning women of color as well. And so some of the things they don't want to accept anymore is stories about women of color that are made by men, told by men, and there is no representation of the perspective of women of color themselves throughout the production. So also, in this Brown Girls Doc Mafia, we have intimate and transparent conversations about wage, about fees, so that so that they're instead of competing with each other, we kind of help each other to see what is fair, what is a fair fee for a camera person or an editor, in a feature-length documentary. But the group then started to expand, not only the US. In the US, they recruited members from all over the world, and it becomes so strong. Now it has 4,500 members, and I'm part of the member of this group. So what kind of scale did it do? First is scaling deep. The group kind of revolutionized the industry, making the invisible visible. Support, so women of color can, know if this film is made by women of color, we kind of support the films, we cheer for each other, and in the talents and resources within women of color is made more visible, so that the pools of resources that were that people did not know become known. So that's examples of scaling deep, but also scaling up. Because I think in the documentary industry, I can see that this voice of getting women of color represented in the funding bodies, in broadcasting companies, are louder and louder. We can see more and more members of Brown Girls and to become decision makers and who decide which film to fund, which film to broadcast, and etc. And I'm part of the people who benefited. I'm from Southeast Asia. We are really, we're really not connected. We were really not connected with the international industry. A part of my initiative was to create a pitching forum that connected Southeast Asian films with the international industry. And through my platform, we supported more than 100 films. More than 20 films have been made. They have gone to more than 100 film festivals around the world. 10 of them have been broadcasted globally. And I think it's also part of the reasons because the films are really good, but also this kind of solidarity of supporting initiatives of women of color have also motivated my colleagues in the industry to collaborate with Southeast Asian documentary films. And also in the Oscar race, they really tried to democratize the Oscar, because Oscar was a very American like a festival, an American minded industry. Instead of being selected by few programmers, the Oscar race was done by voting, right? And so a part of the initiatives in the documentary industry was to get more and more women of color to be a member of the Academy of Science, Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences. These are the body who vote for the Oscar, vote for the nomination and the winner of Oscars. And through through the solidarity, they nominated me, and then I became part of the member. And when I joined, one of the things they told me was like, okay, Amelia, next year you need to nominate documentary filmmakers from Southeast Asia, preferably women, to be part of the academy. And this, so the awareness and organizing and also leadership within the women documentary filmmakers actually is really driving change, both in the scaling deep and scaling up.
Thanks so much, Amelia, for showing us this beautiful example of how you can, have a wide reach across all the borders. And at the same time, establishing people, and it's kind of scaling up to be the ones that are within the Oscar nomination process. So then again, it changes, as we pointed out before. If people are represented within the important boards, then of course they have a major influence on what is being done. So thanks again for showing us the documentary field and what you're doing in there. I would like to turn now to Julie. We have you back. We talked about the documentary field. Now I'd like to point out that, with the Pioneers Post that you're working at, it is the Social Entrepreneur magazine, which delivers news and sets the agenda for social entrepreneurs and investors. And so how do you do it? How do you select stories? How is it that your magazine is so strong in this field? What is your secret? What is your superpower within the magazine?
Sure, we've got superpowers. Can you hear me okay now? I'm
yes, and please, only a small voice, it's fine.
Okay, so at Pioneers Post, we're a magazine for social entrepreneurs as well as about social entrepreneurs. So our readers are people within the impact community, and actually we've got an all-female editorial team as well. So apart from our founder Tim, everyone on the team is a woman, which just sort of evolved. It wasn't a conscious decision, but also we know about the social enterprise world. We know that there are more women social entrepreneurs leading social enterprises than are leading globally, than are leading small and medium-sized enterprises. We know that women are particularly strong as entrepreneurs in this social entrepreneur field. And even in some countries like Singapore, 2/3 of social enterprises are headed by women. So we know that our world is very, very strong on women. and we do try to reflect that in our coverage. So yeah, for example, if you look on our website, pioneerspost.com, we reported on a project in Ghana recently, which was a training program for young people, and most of the 16 out of the 20 sort of finalists on this training program that had reached out to 1,000 young people in Ghana, 16 out of 20 of them were women social entrepreneurs. And when we wrote about the project, we said, oh, we better write about a man too, just to balance it up a bit. So that made a nice change, sort of thinking about balancing things up the other way. And also we run our own WISE 100 project, which supports female social entrepreneurs in the UK, the top 100 female social entrepreneurs every year, and we celebrate them and we support them and we help them with networking and celebrate their stories. So yeah, to us, the women are a really strong part of our coverage, but we know as well that women suffer from lack of confidence. They suffer from imposter syndrome, and telling their stories is often harder for women than for men. Like you were saying, Katja, it's you get the men who are really confident and say, yeah, I'll tell my story to you, but then the women might be a little bit more reluctant to volunteer themselves to come forward to that. And I think the key to that, I think, is training and preparation. So we do work with social entrepreneurs. As Pioneers Post, we have a training program for social entrepreneurs, and we train them in telling their stories and being able to do an elevator pitch and say, tell a busy editor about their social enterprise in just a really short space of time and get to the real nuggets of what their impact is and what's exciting about what they're doing. And I think you can get over that lack of confidence and those feelings of not being quite confident enough to talk to editors, to talk to journalists, by some training and by some preparation.
Thank you, Julie, for sharing that. I was wondering, if we look at what we heard now, it's how can we change within the institutions the topic of representation of women journalists, of women in the boards of the institutions, of media institutions. And on the other hand, we've heard, for example, from you, Rana, there is a lot of need and also desire from the bottom up to hear stories from social entrepreneurs, from women, you know, in order to have a more solutions journalism oriented approach. So we have these two aspects. On the one hand, we need more people in the institutions. On the other hand, we need the stories, and there is a demand, I believe, from the public to hear these stories. So I was wondering, what are your thoughts on this kind of sandwich situation, and what are solutions that you might find to find these solution-oriented journalism stories, especially focusing on women and social entrepreneurs? Katja, would you like to explore
so for me,
this question
really,
a little bit?
about making more female representation within the newsrooms, and Rana had very nice numbers there of how many editors-in-chief, for example, are there, you know, not so many. So, and what I see is really that whenever you have an editor-in-chief who is a female, and then of course there are other females or other women coming and being there in the leading positions. And I think that's one very important thing, that really is staffing. But I think on the other hand, there are also several things that women can do and that media can do. And perhaps women, and Julie said this very nicely, is really just have confidence, be confident. And I think really every woman has to know that she is a role model for another woman. And whenever she tells her story, that's so important. Don't be reluctant, be confident, because you have an amazing story to tell. And I can always only encourage women really to be very open and not to be afraid to talk with media, because it's nothing evil. In the opposite, it really helps the whole thing, you know, it helps the cause that we are fighting for. So I think this is really what women themselves can do. And on the other hand, what we try within Ringe is that I mentioned this problem that women are not so easy to find whenever it comes in terms of experts. So what we did was really to make an expert list where only women are on it. And this is a tool for our newsrooms where they have easy access to really leading women in their expertise fields, from science, from politics, economy. So they are easy accessible, and they cannot say, hey, we didn't have time to find a woman, because they are here on the list and you can look on the list. So this is one thing. And the other thing that we try is we see that as media and as pictures also shape reality, or our belief of reality, we see that we often miss pictures of women in leading positions, for example, or in whenever it comes to technology, or yeah, like Bitcoin, stuff like that, or board members. It's always the same pictures, you know, and there is not a huge variety of pictures. So what we do there is an initiative within this year that we say we want to encourage photographers within Switzerland to make pictures of women in not those traditional roles, but really the new roles. And also, of course, men at home cooking, or, you know, really just not transporting the same old role models all over again, but bringing new role models. And I really hope that this will also have an impact, because then we have the stories and we also have the pictures that go with it. And as we all know, pictures are very important as well. So
thank you, Hatja. Thank you for this encouragement of, you know, strengthening the confidence of women, of looking how we can change the staffing in the institutions. And yeah, as we all know, we want to see more pictures of teams, mixed teams, and more women within the pictures that we get with media
Maybe
every time.
yeah.
Rana, what about you? Would you like to also explore this question of where can we, you know, what can we do in order,
Absolutely.
especially for social entrepreneurs, female social
Absolutely.
entrepreneurs,
So
to be seen and heard?
I kind of wanted to really more say that from the perspective of what social entrepreneurs and women social entrepreneurs can do. One of the things that we set out to do with our platform Khatira right from the start is how can we deliver content in a way that it actually appeals at mass, so that we can get the change from mass media itself. Because at the end of the day, mass media cares about eyeballs. At the end of the day, if the content that you're putting out there, if you are proving that your model, that the formats that you are using, that the way that you're telling the story, that the content that is being pushed out there is not niche, is not just development sector kind of content. If you're actually making that content in a way that actually appeals to the masses, you will reverse the formula. And we have actually experienced that firsthand. On Khatira, we launched a series of 10 episodes back in June of last year. The 10 episodes were tackling huge topics in the region, taboo topics in the region: periods, honor, sexuality, physical bodies of women, things that mass media would not come near in any shape or form, and things that have previously been dealt with, but potentially on a very, very small scale, very niche groups, very niche platforms. But what we have managed to do with the series, we tapped into two things. One is using a content format that is extremely appealing in the region, and extremely appealing for young people in the region, which is satire. And using satire in a format, again, that is very popular. So this was, the show was all about Maria, our host, sitting in her bedroom, a really cool looking bedroom, and using satire and a monologue type of, approach to really tackle these topics. On over 10 episodes in a debut show, on a debut, platform, we managed to reach 14 million views, which is phenomenal when we are talking about really taboo topics and heavy topics as well. And obviously wanting to deliver specific key messages and facts. And so it was a lot to deal with, but we had to look collectively at who are we putting behind the screen? How are we forming Maria's character in a way that is appealing, yet that is also stereotype breaking? How do we actually use a format that appeals to the masses? And what was really interesting is that as our viewers were engaging with us online, they were tagging mainstream media channels. We're talking AJ Plus, Al Jazeera Plus Arabic, which is big with youth in the region. They were tagging AJ Plus Arabic saying, you need to get Maria on one of your shows and give her a show because this stuff is really good. And we were getting messages from mainstream media show hosts that usually are tackling, taboo topics through satire, men, sending us topics saying, why don't you get Maria to talk about this topic in one of your episodes? You guys are really doing well. So by kind of reversing the formula of saying, let's not keep chasing mass media, let's not keep pushing on what you should do, which we do, by the way. In a sense, we do have, capacity building, workshops where we go and share and say, the situation is really bad. You guys really need to look at, the way that you're representing women. And here are some suggestions, and here's some, parts of our experience, which will still get you the eyeballs. So we do that, but we do so little of it because, again, it's a matter of resources. But what we found is a much more effective way, a far more effective way, is to actually produce that content and put it out there. Be extremely creative with the kind of content. Understand the dynamics, what your audience really wants. Understand what young people really want. Be able to think outside the box and drop the hat of delivering content within the limits of what we have historically as well in the development sector have done, to try and present that content and really tap into new forms, new ways of talking to people, and then success will follow. And so when I'm thinking of social entrepreneurs, I'm thinking of a lot that are already, tapping into amazing, different contemporary content and formats of content where they are able to break away from having a limited reach and having a limited view to really understanding what their audiences want, to really understanding how they can actually formulate their story in a way that really resonates with the masses so that they can kind of break out of that. And so that would be my...
Rana, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your enthusiasm, your passion in bringing content in an innovative way to the audiences, appealing to the masses, especially, that's very impressive, about these taboo topics that you're talking about, especially in your region. So thanks for these impulses. We now have 8 minutes left until we're finished with our beautiful session here. I was wondering if it's possible to have one round now at the end to really look at social entrepreneurs again, our female social entrepreneurs. We've heard so much about what we need to do in order to get the staffing differently, in order to bring innovative concepts to the content itself, to look at trainings, as Julie pointed out, to really train social entrepreneurs, female social entrepreneurs especially, to have more confidence. We also heard from Amelia about how to change the documentary sector by, having these pilots, these initiatives where women work together and create impact. So what would be your, just a few thoughts that you would like to share with us here in the audience on how to look at these different angles of the system and what we can do, especially resource oriented, to improve the presence of especially female social entrepreneurs in the media sector? I'd like to start with Amelia now, and then Julie and Rana. And
some of my biggest dreams are that my children grow up knowing stories of women change makers from our region. So like right now in Indonesia, for example, the books available to my children are Marie Curie, Amelia Earhart, Mother Teresa. These are not women from my country, but there are the great women who have changed a lot of our society, solved a lot of problems. So I want the children to grow up knowing that these women can do it, and so can they. So that's one of my greatest dream. Another small thing that now we have, in Indonesia was like, we tell each other that we do not come to webinars that are hosted by all men panel. We call it manel. when all the panels are men, we just write to the organizer, like, hey, all your panels are men. Where are the women experts in this field? And so even small act of this, and usually the organizers were like, oh, do you know anyone? So even small acts like this can start create change.
Thank you so much, Amelia. And I'm looking forward to seeing the story about you yourself that you can show your daughter, And thanks for this impulse of, looking at panels and saying no to certain panels that are not diverse. Thank you so much. Julie, what about you?
Yeah,
what would you like to share with
I see
our
the conversation going on down the side and talking about celebrating women social entrepreneurs. And yes, that's important, but we must remember the media isn't here to do your PR. This isn't PR. It's telling stories, but we need to be truthful. We need to be honest. We need to get the grit in the oyster and to learn from each other. And you don't learn from each other unless you are truthful and honest and you tell your story authentically and genuinely. And I think women are actually really good at doing that. So, but just remember, we're not here to be your PR. We're here to help you tell your stories. And I think women can do that really well.
Thank you, Julie, for this beautiful reminder. And again, I'd like to point out solutions journalism. It's not about talking about the only the positive impact or whatever, but it's about truthful stories, just like you said. And yes, I also truly believe women are strong in doing that. They only have to be they should be confident in doing it. Thank you. Rana, would you like to share some thoughts?
Yeah, I think some final words
at the end of our session?
Might, as well of what Amelia, Amelia said. We in the and they might be more specific as well to where we do media at Womanity, which is in the Middle East and North Africa. But given what the region is going through, I think that women in the region have an amazing role to play, and I think everything that they are bringing in terms of their voices as social entrepreneurs, in terms of the solutions that they're bringing to the table, to a region that is heavy with social issues, with a region that is really in need of a drastic social change, is absolutely not just a nice to have. It is absolutely critical. The work that they are doing is absolutely critical. Not to say that obviously in other regions it's not, but I'm saying it is just more so critical where, in a region like the Middle East, and specifically for women to take a leading role. We have, one of the amazing women that led part of the Sudanese revolution a couple of years ago, a young 22-year-old. Her picture went viral because she was, singing and leading crowds as she was, on top of a car. We have this Arabic proverb that says that the voice of a woman is shameful, which is in Arabic, as-sawt awra. And during the chants, people were saying, as-sawt thawra, the voice of a woman is a revolution. It's not a shame. So I think that I'll end with that in a sense of how critical it is for us to bring out the voices of women, the stories, the impact that they are making, and for them to really integrate that and be able, it's only on us to give them the resources so they can do that.
Thank you, Rana. The voice of a woman is a revolution. Beautiful phrase for us to share here. Thank you.
I would like to connect there with Rana, because I think it's really all about voices and women voices. And our initiative is called Equal Voice, because we really believe that it's about women. We have to make them more visible, but we also need to have a man on board. It's not either or, it's together. And I think this is really so important, that I really hope that we get to a point where all voices are equally heard within media and within society. And I think that's really something that we should go on working together for this very big goal.
Thank you so much, Katja. Thank you for, showing how we can be stronger together. And again, a warm thank you to everybody who's listening out there to this panel of wonderful, powerful women in the media sector. Thank you, Katja. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you, Julie. And thank you, Rana. and all the best for our next sessions. I'm very grateful to Iman and her team for having set up this wonderful movement of WISE, and let us all work towards a goal where we have this voice of revolution, not only the female one, but all of our voices.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Bye-bye.
And
It's really
bye-bye.
great. Thanks. Bye.